Tonight you are going to get into bed, pull the covers up, and sleep alone, or next to one specific person you chose. You will not think twice about that, but for most of human history, the person beside you at night was a stranger. And that was not strange at all. The bed you sleep in is one of the most private objects in your life. You pick who enters it. You control the temperature, the pillow firmness, the side you claim. It feels almost biological. This need for your own sleeping space. But here is the thing. That feeling is not ancient. It is barely 200 years old. The idea that sleep is private, that the body at rest belongs only to you, is one of the newest inventions in human social history. For most of the time humans have existed, sleep was communal, and not just communal in a camping trip, sleeping bag on the floor kind of way, communal in a deep, structural, socially mandated way. The stranger in your bed was not an accident. They were an expectation. To understand why, you have to go back to the way people actually moved through the world before the industrial age, and what night meant when it arrived. Historian Roger Eckert spent decades combing through diaries, court records, medical texts, and literature from medieval and early modern Europe. What he found, and published in his 2005 book At Day's Close, Night in Times Past, reshaped how historians think about sleep entirely. Night, Eckert showed, was not simply the absence of day. It was a separate world, a dangerous one. Once the sun went down, roads became treacherous. Criminals, wolves, and spirits, real or imagined, claimed the dark. No one who could avoid being outside at night would be, and so people pressed together. Warmth and safety came from bodies, lots of them, into long trade routes, the major arteries of pre-modern life, routinely packed multiple travelers into a single bed, not a dormitory, a bed. If you were making your way across England in 1500 and you stopped at a roadside inn, the innkeeper did not apologize for the man already sleeping on the left side of the mattress. You climbed in, he shifted, morning came and you both moved on. This was not poverty, this was procedure. Wealthy travelers did it too. Judges, merchants, clergy. The shared bed was not a mark of desperation, it was the default architecture of nighttime life, and it went deeper than travelers. In peasant households across Europe, and in colonial America, and in Japan, and across sub-Saharan Africa, the sleeping arrangement was the family unit plus whoever else needed warmth at night. Servants slept near their employers, apprentices slept near their masters, guests, even guests met that same day, were folded into the sleeping space without ceremony. In Japan, the practice of sharing floor bedding among households had its own quiet social grammar, with positions near the center reserved for honored guests. In West Africa, extended family compounds organized sleep collectively. The bodies of children, elders, and visitors mingled together in a way that signaled safety and belonging. Anthropologist Carol Worthman at Emory University has spent years documenting cross-cultural sleep practices, and what her research consistently shows is that solitary sleep, one person, one space, insulated from others, is the statistical outlier across human cultures. The global norm, the arrangement that matches most of recorded human behavior, is co-sleeping, contact sleep, bodies close enough to register each other's breathing. This matters more than it sounds, because your body still expects it. When you sleep alone in a quiet room, your nervous system does not fully relax the way it does when another breathing body is nearby. Worthman's research suggests that co-sleepers show more stable arousal patterns across the night. The presence of another person actually regulates the nervous system in ways that solo sleep cannot replicate. Your body evolved over hundreds of thousands of years in conditions where sleeping alone meant something had gone wrong. It meant you were separated from your group, and in the ancient world, being separated from your group at night was often the last mistake you made. Your ancestors who slept alone in the dark were frequently the ones who did not survive to become your ancestors. So your body built in an alarm, a low-level, chronic vigilance that activates when the warmth and breath and subtle sounds of other bodies are absent. You might know this feeling without having named it, that particular restlessness on nights when the house is empty, the awareness of every small sound, the sleep that never quite lands as deeply as it should. That is not imagination. That is an ancient threat detection system that never got the memo that your door locks now. But here is where the story gets stranger, because the shift away from shared sleep did not happen gradually, it happened fast. And it was not driven by hygiene or comfort or any discovery about the body's needs. It was driven by something much more mundane, furniture prices. As the Industrial Revolution moved through Europe and America in the 1800s, manufactured goods became cheaper, beds became cheaper, wood became cheaper, and for the first time in history, the middle class could afford to give every family member their own sleeping space. Privacy became purchasable, and once it was purchasable, it became desirable, and once it was desirable, it became a marker of status. The wealthy had always had private chambers. Now the rising middle class could signal their arrival by copying that arrangement. Historian Simon Schroeder and others have documented how rapidly this transformation moved once it began. Within 2 or 3 generations, what had been ordinary, the shared bed, the stranger beside you, became something shameful or suspicious. Medical authorities in the late 1800s began publishing warnings about the dangers of sharing beds: too much carbon dioxide, disease transmission, moral corruption. The science was thin, the cultural anxiety was thick. The private bed became evidence of civilization itself, and so something that had been perfectly normal for all of recorded human history became, within the span of a few decades, unthinkable. Think about what that means for the disgust or discomfort you would feel if a stranger climbed into your bed tonight. That reaction feels primal. It feels like it comes from somewhere deep and old, but it does not. It comes from furniture economics in the 1800s and the social anxieties of a newly wealthy class, trying to distinguish itself from the past. The ancient feeling is actually the opposite one. The ancient feeling is what your body does when it reaches for warmth in the dark and finds none. That low hum of unease, that sleep that won't fully arrive. That is the old signal, the one your nervous system has been sending for hundreds of thousands of years. Not danger in the bed, danger outside it. The real alarm was never about the stranger beside you. It was about being alone tonight. When you pull the covers up and the room goes quiet, notice what your body does in the first few minutes. Notice whether the silence feels restful or whether something in you is still listening for the sound of another person breathing. That is not anxiety. That is memory, the oldest kind, encoded not in your mind but in the part of you that existed long before minds kept records. Your body remembers the dark, and it remembers that you were never supposed to face it alone.